Welcome back to the Dialed In Angling Podcast presented by Strike Master Augers, Onyx Fish, and Arneson's Rocky Point Resort. Well, the fishing opener is upon us. It's like a holiday for most anglers in Minnesota. I know for me, every single year, I look forward to fishing opener just like I do any other holiday that we have on the calendar, maybe even more. Fishing opener, deer hunting opener, firearms season, deer camp are always two special dates that are on the calendar that are definitely not a holiday, but a holiday in my family. You know, fishing opener, ever since I've been a little kid, it's always been tradition. Going out with my dad, my grandpa, lots of our friends, we almost always go out crappie fishing the day before opener, do a little crappie fishing, we get our fish fry out of the way, and then boom, we get up in the morning and head out on fishing opener. In years past, we would hit it hard. Even I remember when I was a young man heading out at midnight. That's no longer the case. I don't get up and go out at midnight anymore. We get up bright and early. We try to beat the rush at the landing and get out there at the crack of dawn, but no midnight for me anymore, at least not in the near future. But we still have the tradition of fishing with my dad. I fish with my son, a bunch of good buddies, and always have a great time. It's always a fun weekend. This weekend looks fantastic. I can think of in the past fishing openers where, it's snowing, it's blowing, it's raining, wasn't sure if the ice was going to go out. That's not the case. Even in northern Minnesota, there was ice as of a week ago. But with this warm up that we've had, the surface temps are really rising quickly. I've had the opportunity to fish all over the place the last week and a half here, from fishing crappies up by Leech Lake to around Brainerd, Aiken, and surface temperatures are rising rapidly. I want to just delve into a little bit of crappie fishing talk just because that's where I've been the last week. It's amazing how even last week at this time, the crappies were out in that 8 to 10 feet of water, a lot of them in a little bit deeper cabbage, some of them staging to come in, to boom, you fast forward to this week, and there are crappies up in the pencil reeds, the bulrushes, along the cattails, extremely shallow water, harbors, along docks. Some of them are even getting ready to spawn on a few of these lakes. So it just gives you an indication how quickly that surface temperature has rose. And of course, when I'm out crappie fishing, particular lakes that I know I'm going to walleye fish on, I always do spend a ton of time scanning, especially shallow water sand flats or break lines adjacent to like where walleyes would be spawning, or even in these stocked fisheries where there may not be a spawn. I try to target those north end of the lake. Let's say it's a sand rock transition or a weed line or whatever. I do a little bit of scanning just to check and see where these fish are, where they're staged up. And I think we're in for a really good walleye opener across the state. Obviously, we've talked in depth about the weather and the temperature differences between the southern part of the state and the northern part of the state. I mean, as a reference, Leech Lake, Winnie, Red, Lake of the Woods literally just went out a week ago. However, with this rapid warm up, things are warming up quickly, but I think you're going to find fish that are at various stages versus if you go to southern Minnesota or Alexandria or Ottertail or whatever, the fish are going to be a little more advanced as far as where they're at in their spawning period. I think, particularly, southern Minnesota or central Minnesota, those fish are done. The males are going to be done milking. The further north you get, even starting at the Mille Lacs Lake, you're still going to find some milking fish, even though the ice has been out for a couple of weeks. The further you vent north, let's say north of Brainerd, into Leech, into Winnie, you're going to have lots of fish that are still milking, a lot of them that are still in those spawning areas. And so, that you're going to have to fish them a little bit different, maybe a little bit slower. And of course, keeping your presentations away from the boat, not spooking the fish. The one thing I've noticed on all these lakes that I've been fishing is even if they're a little bit stained, a lot of these lakes are really, really clear. And I think it has to do with the later ice out. A lot of times right after ice out, things are really clear, especially on these bodies of water. But It's amazing being up on Leech, on Winnie, on Mille Lacs, lakes that have zebra mussels. Man, is it clear. Leech Lake, for example, I've never seen Leech Lake that clear. Just incredible how clear it is right now. I spend the time this week. I usually will try to crappie fish in different areas. And in doing so, I also like to do a little bit of scanning, like I referenced before, looking for walleyes. I'm not fishing them, but I do some scanning. And man, there was times where I planned on scanning with side imaging or even forward-facing sonar, but I got to the areas and it was dead flat calm, and I could see the bottom in 10 feet of water on Leech Lake. And I'm talking the main body water, not just Walker Bay. And so if that gives you any indication, you're really going to have to compensate for that. Some of these fish might be a little bit deeper than you're used to. Sometimes on Leech and Winnie, you're getting them up in that 4, 5, 6 feet of water, especially when the wind's blowing. I think in some areas, especially the main body of water, Walker Bay, you're going to have to fish just a little bit deeper. I think those fish are going to be out in that 10 to 12, even 14 feet. They're definitely going to be spooky. So staying away from the crowds is going to be important. Targeting your own fish if you can. That's all going to play into a successful opener just based on what I'm seeing right now. Looks like next week's going to be even warmer after the opener, so it'll be interesting how fast things rapidly change as we get into next week and, of course, towards Memorial Day weekend. If you're coming in, if you're just fishing small lakes in Minnesota, or you're coming up to Mille Lacs to fish smallmouth bass, or I know a lot of people are looking forward to opener to bass fish because that's obviously a catch and release season starting on fishing opener. Boy, the largemouth are snapping in the shallow waters. There's times where we've been crappie fishing and it's hard to get away from some of the largemouth. I haven't, looked for smallmouth yet, but I would bet with these warm-ups, especially when you get this really rapid warm-up, these fish like to slide in those shallower waters. They're warming up. They're chasing bait. They're going to be hitting jerk baits. They're going to be hitting swim baits. It's going to be a very fun fishing opener in Minnesota. And you're going to have a lot of people participating. Anytime you get this sort of warm temperatures that are forecasted for the weekend, people are going to be making plans. I know it seems like everyone I've talked to this week, all eyes are on opener. Everybody's making plans to get together with buddies, with families, with friends. I am certainly doing the same. On this week's podcast, we're going to do some interviews with some bait shops. Hopefully I can get a few guides on board to give insight on where they'll be fishing, how they'll be fishing. I know for me, I am so looking forward to jig fishing. I'm hoping with the warm-up that the spot tail shiners, shiner minnows are going to be plentiful in all these bait shops. I hope bait's not going to be an issue this year. Leeches might be a little bit more of a challenge, but we'll see. I'm always amazed at opener, especially on a year like this where you have a little bit later ice out. I'm always amazed at how quickly all these bait dealers around the state are just quickly filling up with bait and trying to get anglers supplied adequately. I know they're all scrambling right now. This is crunch time for them. And so making sure that you're hitting the right bait shops at the right time is always going to be key. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to interview various bait shop owners in the state, swinging into different people's establishments. I'm kind of working my way north here today. I'm going to hit a few crappie lakes. I'm going to enjoy the weather and make the best of it. So stay tuned. We're going to have more interviews on Dialed In Angling coming up next. All right, first stop on my way around to all the various bait shops across Minnesota. I'm at Tutts Bait and Tackle here in Garrison. Jason Barr is with me. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
The theme of this podcast, obviously Minnesota fishing opener, everybody's jacked up, even being in the store here, listening to customers that are in here buying electronics and bait, and everyone's gearing up for opener. Everyone's excited. The weather is supposed to be as ideal as you could possibly get for opener. What are you seeing as far as customer base coming in? What are they looking for? It seems like the excitement for fishing opener is at a level 10.
Right. And no, you're absolutely right. And I think it's interesting that the Minnesota DNR has reported as of about a week ago a 10% increase in license sales so far this year, which is kind of interesting considering what a late spring we had. You would have thought last year that guys and gals would have bought their license earlier because we had open water earlier. So it'll be interesting to see if the number catches up, like if that 10% gets eaten up, is just people buying them earlier than they did last year, or if that sustains. But I do know, like I looked at our numbers. So last year at this point, we had done around 17,000 in license sales for the year. And this year we've already done 23,000. So we're running at about a 30% increase year over year in numbers. So I don't know. I think we're getting a lot of new anglers. And so that's very exciting. Like you said, people are ready to go. Going to be a beautiful weekend. And you know what? Our phone's blowing off the hook. You know what they're asking for? I bet you know, Tony.
Shiners, baby. Everyone's looking for shiners. I predicted it last week when I was talking on our podcast. I said with the warm up that we're having, I was a little nervous just because the ice hadn't been off of Leech. It wasn't off of Red Lake. Lake of the Woods still had ice. But now with the warm up and this quick uptick, I know shiners, man, and they are so temperature sensitive. And you get these warm days like this, especially these warm afternoons, and these bait dealers are running circles. They're running. I can't imagine what their schedule looks like right now.
No, it's kind of funny because, bait guys are just bait guys. Bait guys are bait guys for a reason. Most of them anyways. They're all really good people. But they don't necessarily communicate very well and some of those things. So I've been on our big guy quite a bit. What's the shiners? And at first it was, oh man, there's no water in the creeks. They're not going to run. And then we got too much rain, and then it got too dry again. And then the water temps. And he came in a few days ago. He said, I've got so many shiners. He goes, you are set. You are not going to run out this year. He goes, I got a full pond of them. So shiners are not going to be a shortage like they are some years. They get hard to get. But that spot tail shiner is like gold, not a golden shiner, but like gold. Pardon the pun.
They are. Everybody wants spot tails, especially if you're fishing Mille Lacs, Leech, Winnie, the big bodies of water where it's a native shiner. I mean, that's the minnow to have. And looks like Tutts bait here. You've got plenty of spot tails. It's good to see that these bait dealers have plenty of bait. I can't imagine the stress. And I feel for them a little bit because you get a year like this where in southern Minnesota or, at least in the Twin Cities or central Minnesota, we had sort of a normal ice out year. Yeah, it's been a little cold in April, but water temps are warming up. You start to get into northern Minnesota, the ice just went off the lake. We haven't had any rain. We didn't have any snow. So I feel for them as far as the creeks being dry. I know personally I've fished a lot of different lakes already this spring looking for crappies. But as I'm poking around too, I like to stop and do a little ditch fishing, like I got, fishing from shore where I'm fishing bluegills and crappies from shore. But I'm always checking out creeks and areas, and everything's down. The water is actually down quite a bit. And now crappie fishing into some of these back bays, getting in there with my boat, I see how far down that water is. And so, yeah, I understand what these bait guys are going through. These trappers, they're doing their best, and you never know what Mother Nature is going to throw at you. But obviously we had the rain and now this warm up, ideal conditions. I'm hearing it a lot from a lot of different, bait guys and people I know that are checking out other spots, and they're saying that they're seeing lots of shiners. So that's great to see. Nothing worse than coming up on opener and no one's got bait. No one has minnows, no one has leeches. What are you seeing as far as leeches?
Yeah, so our leeches look great. I'm actually shocked. So these are by far, now I'm only 5 years into this, but these are the biggest leeches we've had this early ever. By far, like we've already got a jumbo. We're going to sell them as a large. It's kind of everybody's opinion on a jumbo is different, but these you could call a true jumbo. And we've never had that on opener.
Yeah. I thought with this warm up for sure, we're going to have shiners. I was a little more concerned about leeches. That's good to hear that, that we've got leeches, we've got minnows, obviously now with forward facing sonar, I know there's going to be a lot of anglers. They're going to want to bobber fish. Certainly jig fishermen out there. Uh, it's amazing, Jason. All the lakes that I've been to so far this season, I'm noticing how clear they are. Even some of the lakes that are a little bit stained, on the level of stainedness, it seems like they're kind of clear, if that makes sense. And I think it has to do a lot with the later ice out, maybe the fact that the water is down and we're not getting a lot of runoff and nutrients into these lakes. But I'm going to so many lakes where the water's clear. You know, I've been kind of poking around the shallows looking for crappies. Most of the time I'm sight fishing. Earlier, when I introduced this podcast, I was talking about, scouting on Mille Lacs, scouting on Leech, scouting on Winnie. Like if you're coming up the day before opener, it pays to get out there, look with side imaging, either forward-facing sonar, and look for fish. But if you get a calm day, nothing cooler than driving around Mille Lacs Lake, or now Leech, how clear it is, or Winnie, how clear it is, and looking for walleyes. It's like looking in an aquarium. And really, you can usually only do it consistently this time of year. But it's one of my favorite things to do, and drive around and simply just look for fish with your own eyes.
Isn't it really neat? I think the benefit to that is seeing it with your eyes and knowing that you're looking at a walleye, and then looking at your electronics and saying, okay, now I know what that walleye looks like on my forward-facing sonar or my side imaging or whatever you're using. It's really neat. Me and my wife were crappie fishing here just the other day, and it was flat calm. The water was super clear. Like you said, we were actually up on Gull Lake, just north of Brainerd, and we could not get within 60 feet of those fish, and they were just taking off. They were spooking everywhere. And had it not been for electronics, we just wouldn't have caught any fish, but because of the electronics, because I could actually see them, I knew they were crappies. I could see them on my FFS. We could cast at them. We could make a long cast. I could throw her bobber out there, land on them, and we caught a ton of fish, So I think you're so right as far as just watching a fish, see what they're doing. And now I know. Now look for those little pieces of rice on your side, or, whatever it is on your forward-facing sonar.
That's how I got good at side imaging, was driving around the sand in Mille Lacs Lake and seeing, oh, those are fish, and then spinning around and like looking at them with my own eyes, or looking at a boulder or a rock sand transition and then spinning around and seeing what that looks like with my own eyes. That's how I got good at looking at side imaging, was that simple fact. It shortened the learning curve when I first got side imaging. And now with forward-facing sonar, if you're new to forward-facing sonar, looks like some fairly calm days leading up to opener, maybe a little more of a south wind. However, you can still get out of the wind and see fish. If you're uncomfortable or just new to forward-facing sonar, get out there and just start using a little bit. If you start seeing what you think is fish, have your trolling motor and drive right to that fish and see if you can identify that species. See if they're walleyes, smallmouth bass. If you get on a small lake, there's lots of largemouth in the shallows. There's tons of crappies. You can get good at utilizing your electronics and get good at just being comfortable with your electronics even before opener. I always say, if you can get out there before opener, when the pressure's off, there's not a ton of people on the lake, and just get comfortable with your electronics, you're going to be way better off once opener hits.
Absolutely right. And a thing that a lot of these bass guys do specifically, and some of the walleye guys, is they'll go out. My oldest, Kyle, actually was just out the other day, and he was just marking spots because the weeds aren't up yet very good. So you can see, again, with your own eyes, these little rock piles and these little gravel patches, and those will hold fish all year long. But once the cabbage is up, or the coontail's up, or milfoil's, you can't see these spots. But if you mark these spots right now, you can go back to them, later in the year when that cabbage is growing around them, and it's almost always money. So it's a great time of year to learn your electronics, specifically because the weeds aren't up yet. Now we can kind of see whatever we want to see.
Great advice. Thanks, Jason. Good luck to all the anglers out there swinging to Tutts Bait and Tackle. If you're in the Garrison area, Jason has tons of bait. He's got lots of tackle here. Thanks again. Good luck on opener.
All right, Tony. Good luck.
OnX Fish is the best tool I have ever used for finding new lakes to target. Download the app today to get fisheries information in the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin. along with research tools for serious anglers and beginners alike. Filter lakes by species, trophy only, keeper fish, abundance, or all of the above. Plan which lakes to fish with the app, navigate to the accesses, and once you're there, use the onX best-in-class weather imagery and fishing hotspots to catch more fish. onX Fish is a phenomenal tool both on and off the water for discovering new fishing opportunities, many of which you would never known existed. onX Fish, the app that is changing the game on ice.
Arneson's Rocky Point Resort in northern Minnesota offers a little something for everyone. Nestled on Lake of the Woods South Shore, it provides easy access to 14 remarkable reefs. Serious anglers know that Arneson's offers some of the best fishing, charter fishing, and small boat fishing options, all supported by the largest protected marina on the lake's South Shore. Accommodation selections range from 1 to 5 bedrooms. Equipped with all the modern conveniences, guests can enjoy a delightful dining experience and stunning lake views at the Rock Harbor Lodge, an on-site full-service bar and restaurant. The two beaches provide hours of fun for the whole family. Whether you're seeking an idyllic fishing spot or a relaxing vacation, Arneson's Rocky Point has everything you need. Check them out at arnesonsresort.com. Okay, my next guest to the podcast is Josh Bullivant from Trapper's Landing Lodge on Leech Lake. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here, Tony.
Man, I can't believe, I think it was just over a week ago, I remember seeing your posts here, and there was ice on Leech Lake. There was ice on Winnie. We've talked extensively in this podcast about how rapidly the weather has changed and how quickly surface temperatures have risen. I know you said you've been out on Leech Lake already, checking things, looking around. What are you seeing from Leech Lake?
So, yeah, you're right. A week ago, Sunday, the ice just went out on the lake, and right away it was still at that 45 and some of those 45 degrees. This past week, I've been out almost daily just checking it out, looking where stuff is. We're seeing temperatures already in the shallow bays, 64 degrees right now. And then out on the main basin out here, we're already up to that 55 to 58 degrees. So it's warmed very, very rapidly. We're seeing those surface temps. And then even with the wind, it's mixing it up and keeping it warm. So definitely those fish are starting to, when I've been looking around too, especially with walleyes, starting to see them go out into those, already moving out of the shallows and kind of getting into those post-spawn areas.
What's amazing to me is how clear this lake is. Last year we saw it kind of clearing up. Now that the ice is gone, and I know a lot of times when you get a late ice out, it's pretty clear, right? Mm-hmm. You know, the water's cold. There's not a lot of algae. But I cannot believe how clear Leech Lake is now.
Oh, it's unreal. Those zebra mussels are definitely doing their job. I think they did this winter. We were seeing some depths almost 22 feet down. So wow. It is definitely cleared up. You can definitely see all the sandbars and the shallow areas just sitting up here in the lodge right now, looking out over the lake. You can see all those, how clear it's become. And it's definitely, it'll change the fishing a little bit for everybody.
100%. All these clear lakes, as they get clearer with zebra mussels, it seems like you have to change the way you fish. I talk on the podcast extensively about staying away from all the boats, casting away from the boats, not spooking the fish with your big motor, keeping your trolling motor. I see it a lot with forward-facing sonar where I try to keep my boat 40, 50, even 60 feet away from fish. And I think that's going to be key to anglers being successful on any body of water, but particularly this year on Leech Lake. We've seen it over the last few years where it's changing and evolving. When I was a kid, when I'd fish Leech, Mille Lacs, Winnebagosh, it was always kind of drift jigging, vertical jigging underneath the boat, right? Lindy rigging, roach rigging, that sort of thing. Now you have to pitch. It seems like you have to get those presentations away from the boat, whether you're using, bobbers, jigs, whatever it is, even if you don't have forward-facing sonar, keeping those presentations away from the boats are always, always key.
Yeah, it is, especially out here. You've seen it. Downsizing's another key with it. You can't get away. This used to be the historical, you could catch them right below in 6 feet of water drifting on on the lake. And yeah, we've definitely seen that out here, 30, 40, 50 feet. Even some days you get it's going to be calm on Sunday, for example, and 85 degrees. You're going to definitely have to be at least 50 feet away from the boat going into it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all things we didn't know prior to forward-facing sonar. Now you can see it, right? And once you bump those fish, it's time to move on. I always tell customers and people that are new to using that technology, if you bump those fish, don't worry about it. Just leave, try to find some new ones, and then come back to those areas. And, a lot of times if those fish are in that area, if there's a big concentration of those fish, they're not going to move that far. It's not like you're bumping them like a white-tailed deer where they're going to go 100 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, they move a little bit, and you can always circle back through those locations. How are you guys looking here at Trappers for opener? I know you're full bore, gearing up. Everybody I've stopped and talked to today is just on the move, ready for opener. How's it looking here at Trappers Landing?
We got some good repeat guests. We're going to be full at the resort. We're looking forward to seeing all the friendly faces, everybody coming through. Restaurants finally going to be open for the year. So, yeah, it's going to be a busy opener. We got lots of people already dropping in their boats through the access this week, and I'm sure it's going to ramp up here as we get closer into the weekend and start really seeing the people show up here Thursday, Friday morning is when we really start seeing the people show up.
You got a cool thing going on in the harbor right now. As I pulled in, I saw some activity down there. You started talking a little bit about it. Can you tell our listeners what's going on? I know there's some DNR down there. What's shaking?
So they're doing the muskie take right now, but they're also doing a side project that's new this year, and it's going to be tracking those muskies on the lake, on Leech Lake. It's the first of its ever, I guess, kind that's going to be done on Leech Lake or even in any Minnesota lake. So they're going to track the migration of these muskies, but they're also going to see how forward-facing really affects muskie fishing. So this is going to be a study over the next couple of years. They're going to tag a whole bunch. They're sticking in GPS probes into a lot of these fish that they're catching right now. Obviously, they're still working on some of the milking and restocking and all of that for these, so they're going to do that. And then they're going to probe these fish, and there's going to be probes around Leech Lake that are going to track these fish and track their movement to see if maybe they're moving differently because of forward-facing, and that just kind of get a feel of really what's going on and see if those fish die or the success rate for anglers catching them, because that is a big concern to a lot of our muskie anglers in the States. So this one, they got a big fund for it. They just literally started this past weekend, and I think their goal is to take close to about 200 muskies.
Wow, that's so cool. If you're listening, basically we've talked about on this podcast, it's been in the news, when it comes to forward-facing sonar, a lot of concerns come from the muskie community, and a lot of them have been from Leech Lake. If you listen to this podcast or if you follow some of the information that has been out there on social media as it pertains to forward-facing sonar and muskie fishing in particular, what the DNR here is doing is they're actually tagging fish with GPS. There's basically satellite areas out there that are picking up those signals. So like a telemetry type of study like they were doing on Mille Lacs Lake with the walleyes to see not only their migrations, but if these fish are caught and recaught, their survival rates. They can tell if fish are surviving, catch rates, all of that stuff. Super cool to see that the DNR is actually doing something like this, and they're hosting it here at Trappers Landing.
Yep.
In addition to their normal milking of the fish this time of year.
Yep. In addition to that, and then it is open to the public. So if you guys want to come see some of these big fish, they're usually here in the morning, each morning checking their nets. So they've got their nets set up over in one of the local bays over there. And you can ask them questions about it. They'll be here answering those questions. They're going to wrap it up, it sounds like, this weekend. Taking them a little bit longer. Again, we talked about the water warming up a lot. That kind of had some effect on those fish moving in and out of the bay for them, they found out. But they're going to go through this next Monday. They're hopefully going to use all of their tags and hopefully have those fish tagged. And then we'll see where the research goes from there. So it's super exciting to see those movements. It's never been done on this lake.
Very cool. Yeah, super cool. I mean, you always hear about the Leech Lake strain of muskie, you know, where they hatch those muskies out and they go all over the state. And I think that's why there was a big concern over what's the muskie population, or how is the muskie population going to be affected by forward-facing sonar, because it's not only a great resource for anglers, but it's a great resource for stocking in the state and replenishing muskies in the state.
Yeah, and it's not just in the state in general as we think about. I have some friends over all the way in New Jersey that actually have Leech Lake strain of muskies that they've stocked and transported all the way across. So a majority of I'd say the upper Midwest, like I said, all the way to New York, New Jersey, those are actual Leech Lake strains of muskies that are being stocked and that get replenished and purchased and brought over to those areas. So there is that Leech Lake strain's the number one most stocked muskie in the United States right now.
Interesting. Gosh, super cool stuff. Well, if you're up at Leech Lake, obviously swing into Trapper's Landing Lodge if you want to take a look at some of the things the DNR are doing. Josh, thanks for being on. Good luck on opener to you and all your guests here at Trapper's Lodge. Looks like it's going to be an opener for the books, man. With the weather being right, everybody's getting bait, getting spot tails. I mean, everything's really lining up to have the makings of a great opener.
It is. It's probably going to be our best one since, for sure, COVID, especially bait, weather-wise. I don't think I've ever seen 85 degrees on a fishing opener.
Oh, I cannot wait. Stay tuned. We got more Dialed In Angling coming your way. Next guest on my podcast, I'm sitting in the legendary Reed Sporting Goods. Cory is kind enough to jump on the podcast with me today. Cory, I know you're busy. It's right before opener. When I walked in, you were talking to customers about fishing. Man, when it comes to weather for this season, it's always like throwing a dart at a dartboard when we talk about opener. Some years it's snowing, some years it's raining. This year, it looks like we're going to hit a bullseye. Cory, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, this is a little different year. You know, I mean, we see a little bit of everything up here in northern Minnesota. I mean, some years we're just hoping to have the ice out by opener and be able to get boats in. You know, this year we're going to see 80+ degree weather, so it's going to be a little different. It's going to be nice, but I mean, you got to remember, ice just went out 10 days ago too, so it should be a good opener around here.
The past few weeks on the podcast have been talking about that very thing. I always hope in the spring that we're going to have an early ice out. I always hope for early ice out just because I love crappie fishing before my season starts. And for me as a guide, after fishing opener, I'm busy. I got to take customers every single day. So I don't get to pan fish and do some of the things I want to do. This year, I was like, oh, finally, we're going to get an early ice out spring. I'm going to be able to fish all these locations. That really wasn't the case. It was so weird. The Twin Cities and I would say south of Brainerd, a lot of lakes started going out 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month ago. In northern Minnesota, it's been ice. Cory just touched on the fact that Leech Lake went out a week ago. Isn't that crazy? Some people think the ice has been out for a long time. It really hasn't.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like it. We went from cold temps to cool temps to ice kind of doing its normal thing to all of a sudden it just kind of disappeared. But if you look at it, it's probably kind of on pace to what it normally is. So I mean, I think with opener this weekend, especially around this area, your walleye bite, obviously your crappie bite, you'll have a lot of things to do this weekend, which I think is going to be great for people.
Yeah, I do too. I think everybody is gung-ho to go walleye fishing. But now, with kind of the catch and release for bass, you've got a great, obviously, smallmouth fishery here and also down at Mille Lacs and a lot of other lakes around where you can fish, catch and release, right? And so you can bass fish. Those options are open. With crappie fishing being in full swing in this warm-up, yeah, anglers are going to have a lot of options. Me personally, I always like to try to sneak in a little multi-species fishing into opener if I can. We always, tradition as a family, we always go out on Friday before opener, tend to do a little bit of crappie fishing, maybe catch a few bluegills, have a fish fry, and then boom, we usually target walleyes on fishing opener. But, the last few years, just because you couldn't keep a fish on Mille Lacs, we've been out on Mille Lacs on opener. Well, when we have these warm-ups, like last year we had an early ice out, we walleye fish till about 10:30, 11 o'clock. And then we went and threw jerk baits for smallmouth and absolutely teed off on them. So, that's what I love about opener. It's just sort of the unofficial kickoff to summer. And if you can get a nice weekend like we're seeing, I think you're going to see customers out here in record numbers.
Yeah. And I think, with the nice forecast we're going to see, I mean, it's going to give give people a chance to get docks in, get lifts in, enjoy the weekend, not only fish, but do a lot of other things around here right now. So I think everybody's looking forward to it. I mean, we finally had a winter, this year compared to the last few. So, I mean, we're ready for this nice weather to move in like this. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. I mean, if you drive through Walker right now, it's apparent. Like, people are here, they're ready, they're at the gas stations, grocery stores, Reed's, they're all over downstairs here at Reed's. What are you seeing from customers as far as, are people a little bit behind as far as rigging their boats? I mean, are people just solely focused on a certain thing, or is there new products that people are really keying in on? What are you seeing at Reed's?
Yeah, you know what I mean? I think this spring, obviously, I mean, we've got some new stuff out there right now. I mean, obviously the forward-facing sonar game right now has got a lot of people's interest. So that's still, kind of on everybody's mind right now. But I mean, there's some new stuff out there. Johnson Outdoors, Humminbird, they've got some new stuff. So I mean, there's a lot of new stuff on the market right now. As far as, boat-wise and everything, yeah, I mean, like you touched before, I mean, down south, I mean, we've had ice out for a month, but, up here, a lot of people are just starting to kind of get stuff out. So we're seeing a lot of people that are looking to re-rig or, redo their boats or getting things on there, even though it's, the week before opener. But yeah, it's kind of exciting. Like I said, this spring, spring and, since the, first of the year, we've seen some new products. So that's exciting in the market right now.
Yeah. And it seems like people are buying, the first guy I saw walking by had a bunch of jigs in his hand. So that, that tells me it's like spring is here. I love seeing people holding, a handful of jigs, some VMC Moon Eye jigs. I just looked over and that's what he had in his hand and in his basket. So jig fishing's on people's mind. Obviously, walleye fishing, being in Walker, Minnesota. I mean, it's the walleye mecca. It's funny because every town calls themselves, the walleye capital of the world. But it's pretty hard to beat Walker on opener, or even when you're coming through here. Swinging into Reed's, just walking through the store makes me feel like summer's here. Cory, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Good luck on opener. I know you got a lot going on here and everybody at Reed's here, but I know you're probably going to get out fishing. So good luck there. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Have a great weekend and everybody be safe out there.
All right. Thanks, Cory. Okay, for the final segment of our podcast, Minnesota Fishing Opener 2025, I just want to cover a couple of regulations, also a couple of the areas where I'll be fishing as far as the depths I'll be targeting, what I'll be using. I know next week, as we get into that first week after opener, I'd like to do some interviews with a few guides, a few fishing buddies that I know that are going to be on various lakes across Minnesota. But first, let's just dive into the regulations, making sure that the regs on the lake that you're fishing is key. There's a lot of new regulations when it comes to Minnesota bodies of water. You can always check at the landings. The signs are usually posted there clearly as far as what the regulations are. But this summer, I guess, starting at opener here or spring, let's just start with Mille Lacs Lake. You can have it's a 2-fish limit. Okay, you can have one between 17 and 20, or you can have two between 17 and 20. You can only have one over 20, and that's a Minnesota state law. So regardless of the lake you're fishing, if it doesn't have special regulations, and let's say it's a 6-fish limit, you're only allowed one over 20. Now, I tell most customers, most fish over 20 inches, we throw them back. A lot of those are bigger females. Plus, in some of these smaller lakes, even if there's not natural spawning, it's still hard to grow those bigger fish, especially over 20 inches. So I like to throw them back. Most of the eating fish I like to keep are under that 20 mark. But it's up to you, personal preference. Other lakes with special regulations, Leech Lake is the same. It's a 4-fish limit. You can only have one over 20 inches as well. The rest have to be under 20 inches. Lake Winnebagosh, same regulations as the last few seasons. Anything between 18 and 23 inches have to go back. You're allowed one over 23, but the rest have to be under 18 inches. Red Lake, new regulation this year, a 5-fish limit. You can only have one over 17, however. And being up there this winter, we caught some bigger fish this winter, but a lot of fish that were in that 14 to 17. So anglers that are going up to Red Lake, I think you're going to have no problems catching tons of eater-size walleyes. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. Regardless of where you go, make sure you're checking the regulations on those lakes, because there's a lot of lakes that have new regulations. Not that many that pertain to walleyes, but there's some special regulations as it pertains to panfish. So just be aware of that as well, because I know a lot of anglers that are coming up on our opener, they might target walleyes in the morning. If it's slow, or they had a successful morning and things slow down, a lot of anglers will shift gears. Like we said earlier in the podcast, they might go bass fishing, they might go crappie fishing. Just make sure you're aware of the regulations if you're planning on harvesting a few panfish with your walleyes. So keep that in mind. I know for me, I love fishing different bodies of water, but I'm always, looking up on my phone like, hey, what's the regulation on this lake? I'm also checking the landings. Almost always when I launch my boat now, I check the landings because of all these special regulation lakes that are now in place. And I'm all for the special regulations. I think it's doing very well with a lot of our bodies of water. I just know personally panfish lakes that I love fishing, ones that have special regulations, are doing quite well. This spring, I've spent a ton of time crappie fishing, and most of which I've spent on special regulation lakes. I love those. I think there's an abundance of panfish in our state, and we have to just really protect those lakes that have good quality panfish, whether it be crappies or bluegills. So, keep that in mind. Other than that, you're going to want to stay tuned. The next podcast that I do, it'll be right after the fishing opener. I'm going to try to pin down a few great anglers, some guides across the state. I want to get their input on what they experienced after opener. I know for me personally, from opener, I'll be on Mille Lacs Lake. After that, I know I'm heading up to Leech. I'm going to try to get to Winnebagosh. I am pumped. I'm jacked. I'm going to be fishing a lot of locations to start the season shallow. But I know with this warm up, some of these fish are going to be pushing deeper. And with the water clarity that we're seeing on lakes like Mille Lacs, Leech, Winnie, you're going to be able to push a little bit deeper this year. And you're going to have success catching some fish deeper, especially if we don't have a lot of wind. If we get some wind on opener, it looks like right now they're kind of predicting a south wind anywhere from, I guess it would be southeast, east wind, anywhere from 5 to 15. If that's the case, I'm going to be seeking out those windy shorelines, or at least a spot where I've got some ripple in the water. That dead flat, calm water on those clear lakes is just a bite killer. So just keep that in mind, especially in the high sun that we're supposedly forecasted for opener, making sure that you're targeting, fish in these areas. If you are fishing shallow, seek out areas that you got a little bit of wind. If you can find some dirtier water, I know just kind of running around Leech Lake, running around Mille Lacs, Winnebagosh, you can always encounter a little bit darker water, whether it's a creek that runs in there, or if the wind's been blowing for a few days, it sort of churns up the bottom a little bit. You get a little bit of green. You don't need a ton of color, but just enough to kind of change things up. It tends to make the fish bite a little bit better. As far as how I'm going to be fishing, these are my two go-tos right now that I'm rigging up. I'm going to have jigs rigged up, jigs and shiners, all these bait shops interviewing Tutts, Reeds, all across everywhere I've been driving. It seems like there's going to be plenty of shiners at opener. So I'm going to be pitching jigs and shiners. I love using VMC Moon Eye jigs on Mille Lacs, Leech, Winnie. I like those more natural colors. I like the green UVs, the blue tigers, things like that. Especially when the spot tails are in, I tend to use more blues, the blues and whites, but I love that neon Moon Eye jig because I love that eye on there. And so I can rig my shiner on there. It's got that great big eyelet. The fish kind of key in on that. And hey, let me tell you, spot tail shiners, even though they're everywhere and at the bait shops, make sure that you're getting your shiners the night before, or getting up early in the morning and hitting the bait shop before the rest of the anglers. Because, supply is very good right now, but you always run the risk of running out. My second go-to presentation is always kind of a 1-2 combo with that, with rising surface temperatures. I'm going to put on a paddle tail, Crush City, Mayer, paddle tails, Largo shads, anything in that 3-inch size that kind of mimics those spot tail shiners that are in the shallows, anything that mimics those young of the year perch that are in the shallows right now. I'm going to have those tied up in my boat as well. And then, of course, bobber rods. I'm going to have bobber rods rigged up, ready to go. The leeches look great right now. Not that you need giant leeches for bobber fishing. I actually prefer sort of a medium to a small large, if you will. Tipping that with a 16th ounce jig, just putting that on there. You can even get away with half a night crawler. I think the water temp's warm enough where crawlers are also going to be a great bait to catch fish on this time of year. Sometimes the water's really cold and they prefer leeches or minnows, and there's a preference there. I mean, I've seen it on opener where they only want minnows. They will not even touch the leeches until it gets a little bit warmer. And usually that's when you encounter that surface temps that's in the 40s, for example. Once you start getting in the 50s, they'll start keying in on leeches. You start getting into mid 50s, even close to 60, like I was seeing on Leech and parts of Mille Lacs Lake. That's when you can go to crawlers. It's a wide open range. You might get a few on leeches, you might get a few on minnows, and then also some on crawlers. So keep that in mind. If you do like live bait rigging, you might have to slide out a little bit deeper. You're definitely going to have to shut off the big motor, and you're definitely going to have to try to stay away from the boats, because I'm telling you right now, I'm seeing water clarities that I've never seen before. And a large part has to be this late ice out, but also zebra mussels, man. These zebra mussels clear up these lakes, and without any snow, and we had all that sun, I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with not a lot of runoff in the lakes. I mean, there's a lot of factors why these lakes are clean, but let's face it, you're going to have to pitch away from the boat. If you got forward facing sonar, try to keep your boat, 40, 50, 60 feet away from those fish. You're going to be more successful. So tune in next week. I'm going to have a bunch of different contributors. I want to pin down some guides, some of my favorite anglers. We've got some guide trips coming up, some group trips. I'll key in on what's working on what body of water, whether it's Leech Lake, Mille Lacs, Winnebagosh. I'm going to try to get some insight even from the Ottertail, Alexandria area, even parts of Vermilion, Lake of the Woods, Red Lake. Hopefully we'll have full reports for you next week on Dialed In Angling. Good luck and happy opener to everybody. Hopefully you can get out there and make some memories that are going to last a lifetime. Until next week, I'm Tony Roach. This has been the Dialed In Angling Podcast.